Howdy folks, Matt here, a bit of a wetland in behind me, just east of Leamington, Ontario. This is actually probably less of a wetland than it should be. There's been a lot of coastal erosion here, and just kind of off in that yonder direction, well, not quite that way, that coastal erosion has actually kind of burst the barriers of this wetland, and so it's a bit more of a bay and inlet now. But either way, still quite a bit of animal life. A carp just flopped up next to me. That's pretty cool. I wish I had a shot of that. Quick update: Lumper's doing great. I can actually see a couple of them popping up out of the ground. They've gone through their flower period, and I think within maybe a couple of weeks, actually might harvest one of the 3 pots just to get some younger potatoes and give them a try. And that's when we'll do a taste test, which I'm very excited about. So that's pretty neat. So the last one of these little dispatches, I was touching on the sheer magnitude of migration during the height of the famine, 1847, 1848. I just wanted to kind of dwell on population movement as a subject for another minute, because of course we have to remember that famine Irish immigrants were not the first people here in this landscape or in many other parts of the world. Neither were the Scottish migrants who came at that time or earlier. Neither were the early French. You know, there's a lot of indigenous people in these areas to begin with. And through reading more about the Great Famine, it really can get you thinking about the implications of mass population movements. And to me anyway, it's an interesting lens to view our current discourse, right? Like in speaking in the Canadian context, at least, we're still very much dealing with the long-term implications and the reconciliation of European settlement of this country. Hey folks, a quick interruption here. Had a bit of a problem with the rest of that file, so slight addendum. Learning more about the Great Famine really highlights just how significant and how multi-layered the effects of mass population movement are. You know, the movement of populations, whether that be from an environmental catastrophe, a crop failure, just knowledge that there's something a little better over on the horizon, or frankly, the weaponization of migration, as we've seen with certain governments, the Kremlin, in recent years. Whatever it is, mass migration is a human story. It's a very old human story, and it's something that all peoples throughout history have done. And for me, studying the famine can show the ripple effects of how those people moving to a new home itself might be a tragedy. It also might end up being an inadvertent tragedy to the peoples whose homes they're moving to. It can highlight how environmental disasters can happen. It can highlight how political and social tensions and political extremism can grow as a result of these things. And it being a human story, it's still very much, as I say, in an issue in our modern day. And so with famine in the back of our minds, I do think it provides an interesting historical context, or helps us contextualize what we're seeing and helps us understand what we're seeing in the modern day. So I think that's pretty valuable. I suppose it comes down to resilience a lot of the time, and trying to build resilience into a food system, whether that's here in Canada or whether that's trying to assist and do our part to help others around the globe do the same. The Irish agricultural system was highly efficient for what it was designed to do at the time, which was admittedly not necessarily the best. But I mean, it was real good up until the Blight. It was really good at feeding a overpopulated island of highly impoverished people. And when that broke down, there was no system to help anyone through that. There were multiple different factors all colliding at once that caused the utter collapse of the system, which sounds kind of familiar to me, given recent events of a more medical nature, shall we say. But it's another reminder that resilience is absolutely key to food security. And food security is key for everything that we do. If we do not have food, that's me, that's somebody in South Africa, that's anyone on this planet, we're all going to pay for it in some way or another. Now, that's not to say, of course, that, I got to shift, the wind's changing direction. That's not to say that food security trumps everything else. in my experience as a journalist and on the communication side, I've seen many cases, I've experienced many instances where a person or a group within the agriculture sector specifically will highlight the need for food security as a reason not to do something. So not to improve that wetland, not to worry about water quality or something like that, which is bull, because both are related, obviously. That should be clear, and I think it is clear. The people who I have seen make this particular argument, I'm pretty sure know that, but they're making the argument for a different reason that isn't genuinely rooted in food security. There's other things at play. Anyway, I suppose I'm not entirely sure what my entire what this entire rant was for, what the overarching point was, aside from just, again, food security and resiliency in food systems is really, really important. That means talking about the environment. That means taking the time to build out food systems that can absorb blows and shocks. And since COVID, I think there's been a lot more of that conversation, at least speaking in the Canadian agricultural sector. That does seem to be a more prominent theme. But you know what? I'm not convinced it's as prominent as it needs to be. And especially when dollars and budgets come into play, still think we're pretty short-sighted on some things. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Hopefully next time we'll get to do a bit of a taste test. So that'll be a bit more uplifting. We'll talk to you later.